Part 2, Coronavirus or COVID-19. In today's lecture, we'll be discussing about our own topic or actual disease, which is called Sars coronavirus 2019, which is caused by SARS-CoV-2, a beta coronavirus, which is protected by double lipid layer, as well as membranal protein. Within this membranal protein, we see different proteins with different sizes, shapes, and functions. Generally, we will start about the discovery of this virus. This SARS coronavirus 2019 for the first time was discovered in Wuhan, China, in a special supermarket which sells vertebrate and invertebrate meat. After China, the second case of death was reported in Thailand. After Thailand, this disease spreads to the other parts of the world, such as United States, and then it spreads to the European country. First in European country, France, which is followed by Italy and Spain. Italy had at that time the highest mortality rate, which was at the range of 10,000 people. So after Italy, finally this virus spreads to Iran, and from Iran to Herat, which is one of the provinces of Afghanistan, and then transmits from Herat to Kabul, and from Kabul spread to the other parts of the country. And finally, WHO has announced COVID-19 pandemic. Right now, in this case, especially in cases of COVID-19, the primary reservoir or the primary source of infection, like two other cases, was bats. Due to some reason, these viruses are mutated in the bats and transmitted to pangolins. And due to mutation of this virus in the pangolin, they transmit to human, and from human to human, or from person to person. Remember, anatomy, pathogenesis, pathophysiology of SARS-CoV-2 is similar to COVID-19. When we discuss about COVID-2, it means we discuss about COVID-19. But there are some differences between COVID-2, COVID-12, and COVID-19 that we will explain them one by one. These differences should be started from COVID-2. The primary reservoir for COVID-2 was bats. For COVID-12 also bats, and for COVID-19 also bats. The intermediate host for three cases are quite different. For example, in cases of the COVID-2, the primary source was cats. Especially they say the name of some animals that is called civet and becundus. In this case, more than 8,000 people are infected with a mortality rate of 9.5%. Let's go and move to COVID-2. In this case, like first case, the primary reservoir was bats. Again, due to some reason, these viruses are mutated in the bat and transmitted to camel. And the intermediate host in case of COVID-2 is camel. But in the first case was cat. In this case, more than 2,000 people are infected with a mortality rate of 35.7%. Let's come back to our own topic. Our own topic was COVID-19, which was our actual disease and which is caused by SARS-CoV-2. This CoV-2 is a beta virus which is protected by double lipid layer as well as membranal proteins. In this case, the primary reservoir, as I mentioned before, is bat, and the intermediate host was pangolins, and finally it virus spreads to human and from human to human. In this case, it means COVID-19. And the number of infected people, the number of the infected people as well as dead people or dead cases, which has announced by WHO in December 24, 2020, could be explained here. The number of global infected people or global cases globally. In the case of globally, globally 78,968,314. This report depends on 24/2020. In this case, the global death rate was 1,703,905 cases of death was present globally. Globally, this was about the global report of the infectivity rate and as well as death rate of the world, or global information about the cases of infectious cases and death cases of COVID-19. Right now we will discuss about those countries in which the infected rate as well as the death case is more. For example, American infected case, 18,511,206 people are infected. The infected people in the United States in the date of 2020, the infected rate was 18,511,268 case of infected. But death case in the United States, 327,573 person. The death. The American infected cases, 18,511,268 cases, and death cases, 327,573 death cases. Let's go to our own country, especially our own country. Infected case in this date, especially 2020, the infected case in our own country, Afghanistan, it was 50,655. The death rate in this case, 2,126 cases of death was in our own country. So we have discussed about some epidemiological trend already, but some of your colleagues told us that we don't know about the concept of the infective reproductive number or reproductive rate or reproductive ratio, and another they tell us about the serial interval, but there was no need to discuss about the ways of transmission because we have repeated a lot about the ways of transmission, incubation period, impact of this virus on about our health. Let's discuss about some epidemiological trends. The first one that we should know when we discuss about the infection, we should at least know about these two terms. One is reproductive number and another is serial number. How should I define the reproductive number? Is there anyone who tell us about the reproductive number? Another name also is reproductive ratio. Another name is about the reproductive rate. Yes, in the first lecture we have discussed about these two terminology. One is reproductive number. What is representing the reproductive number? Reproductive number represents the severity rate of infections or transmission rate of infections. Generally, it represents the potential of contagiousness of the disease. This reproductive number varies from infection to infection. For example, for COVID-2 2.2, for common cold, it was 5, and for smallpox it was 6, and for measles it was 8 to 18. The highest number represents the potential of contagiousness of the disease. Here measles have got highest potential of contagiousness. The second thing that we should discuss about remember, in case of COVID-19, this reproductive number represents or shows exponential growth or exponential rise. It means when one person is infected by this virus infects 3 other persons, and these 3 other persons should infect 9 other persons. Likewise, 9 other persons infect 27, and 27 infects 81. So generally, reproductive number in patient with COVID-19 represents exponential growth or exponential rise. This was about the reproductive number of COVID-19. Let's discuss about the series interval. What is the series interval?
Amount of sick per time.
Yes, the differences between the reproductive number and serial interval. In case of reproductive number, just we have talked about the infected cases. And this infected cases may be symptomatic or maybe asymptomatic. But in case of series interval, we will discuss about the symptomatic cases. Now, what is the series interval? By giving of this example, we will know about the concept of the series interval. For example, this is the first one is infected, and the onset of the symptom of this person to the onset of the symptom of second person gets 3 days. From the onset of the second person to the onset of the third person also gets 3 days. Generally, this series interval represents the number of sick people per time. It was the differentiation between both the reproductive number and series interval. By drawing of this example, we will know more about the concept of the series interval. This is a simple graph. This is the y-axis. What is representing the y-axis? Y-axis represented the number of the sick people per the number of the sick people. What is represented? X-axis representing the time duration during which the people are infected. Right now, when this virus or this infection outbreaks in a new place or in a new city, this graph represents a skyrocket. Why it represents a skyrocket? Because many people are getting sick all at once. Why many people are sick all at once? Because of lack of information about the prevention of virus as well as unawareness about the virus itself. In such a case, in cases of the skyrocket, our healthcare system is overwhelmed. It means they are not able to cover these huge number of the people which are getting sick all at once. Even the people or the medical staff, they are exhausted. By passing of the time, this skyrocket gradually becomes flat. When again this virus outbreaks, again in a new place or a new city, this graph will represent, or the curve represent, skyrocket. Again, why it represents the skyrocket? Because these new people which are infected in a new place or in a new city, they don't have a complete information about the prevention of this virus, as well as unawareness about the virus of itself. And in this case, that the more people are infected, for example, more than 30 or 50,000 people are infected, and they go through the ICU unit or other unit, or they come to the hospital, the hospital may be overwhelmed, and they not able to cover these huge number of the people which are infected all at once. So our medical staff is exhausted, and this cycle may be continued, and again it is continued. This was about the concept of the series interval. Let's move to another epidemiological term is the ways of transmission. How many ways of transmission do we have? Three. Generally airborne. This virus remains in the air for 3 hours and travels up to 6 feet or 2 meters. Generally, this virus is transmitted from asymptomatic or symptomatic patient to non-infected person by respiratory droplet through by coughing and sneezing. This was about the ways of transmission. The first ways of transmission is respiratory ways, and the second ways of transmission in contacts. For example, this virus survives over different surfaces with the different durations. But generally, this virus survives over some surfaces for 8 hours or even up to 24 hours. When we touch to those surfaces which have already infected by this virus, we will get easily this virus. And when we touch to our hand, to our face, or to our T-zones, we will inoculate this virus in mucosal membrane of the eyes, nasal cavity, as well as oral cavities. This was the second way of transmission. The third one is fecal-oral route. And lastly, the baby will get this virus during delivery from her mother. This was about the ways of transmission. Generally, we have got 3 ways of transmissions. After transmission, infection when is infected the person, we should think about the second part is incubation period. What is incubation period?
The period when the virus shows the signs.
Incubation period represents a time duration during which infection is entering into the body and then develop the first symptoms, or they develop symptoms, or they become symptomatic. This is called incubation period. Incubation period for COVID-2 was 2 to 14, or even they have mentioned up to 25 days. This was about the incubation period of this COVID-19. Another things, COVID-19 is after incubation. Impact of this virus. What will be the impact of this virus in our life? First one on health. The second is
The economy.
The second is economy, and the third one is travel. This was about the impact of this virus. Finally, we have discussed about some terminology or some abbreviation words. For example, first we'll discuss about the SARS. What does it mean, SARS? Severe acute respiratory syndrome. Compatible with this syndrome, we also use another term, which are, for example, ARDS. What does it mean, ARDS? SARS and ARDS. Acute respiratory or adult respiratory distress syndrome. The second one is MERS. What does it mean, MERS? Middle East respiratory syndromes. Yeah. And what does it mean, COVID? COVID. What does it mean? Coronavirus disease. 2002. 2 stands for 2002. What does it mean? COV-2. CV2. Coronavirus 2002. This was about those abbreviations that we have discussed already. Another, who volunteered to tell us something about the extract of these? This lecture is repeated because of some you guys to tell us to again we should discuss. Just there are some differences between this lecture to other lecture, especially the global infected case. It means the number of infected cases as well as the dead cases of the world, especially global, and also those countries which are more affected by this virus is United States. This was about that one. And generally another, in previous lecture, before this lecture in part 1, this is the part 2 lecture, we have discussed also about the same thing, but we have got over there some topic about the zoonosis or zoonotic. Do you know about the concept of zoonosis? Zoonosis or zoonotic. When an infection spreads from the animal to human, and the human get this virus, this is called zoonosis or zoonotic. Generally, COVID-19 is a zoonotic disease. And then we also discuss about the coronavirus. What corona stands for? What corona stands for? Corona stands for a crown. It is a Latin. It means this virus has a crown shape or crown shape structure. When this virus is viewed under the which microscope? Electron microscope. This virus appears like a crown. So and therefore they say this virus is, they call this virus coronavirus. And another thing that we have discussed about the virus, right now we have got information about the virus, and we have discussed about the definition of the virus, classification of the virus, replication of the virus, as well as shape of the viruses. This was the thing that we have discussed already. And this lecture was a combine of new thing as well as old things. Now that is enough. This was a short lecture. How much time is taken?